Hello, everyone. Welcome back to The Victim's Voice. I'm your host, Lorelei. 1 year ago, on April 25th of 2024, I covered the case of missing 12-year-old Lori Paige from Tallahassee, Florida, who allegedly went missing from her dad's apartment on the night of June 2nd, 2023. Her middle school teacher, along with complete strangers who advocate for victims online, became her biggest advocates and kept Lori's name in the public eye, while the people who were in Lori's inner circle that were supposed to care about her did nothing to help find the little girl. Since covering her case, there have been some major updates, and unfortunately, it's not good news. Not only were Lori's remains found this year on April 5th on a plantation in Georgia, but there was also an arrest in the case. On April 11th, 2025, Lori's own father, Andrew Wiley, was arrested and charged with second-degree murder. He is accused of killing his daughter, dumping her remains, then trying to cover his tracks, all the while telling law enforcement that Lori was missing and allowing them to spend money and resources to find her when he knew where she was all along. So we're going to go over everything in the probable cause affidavit, which is 66 pages long. So this is going to be a 3-part series. With that being said, let's go ahead and dive in. Lori Annalise Paige was born to Miranda Paige and Andrew Wiley on April 14th of 2011. Miranda was only 17 years old when Lori was born, and according to her mom, Brooklyn, she had asked to have an abortion when she was 6 months pregnant, but never went through with it for unknown reasons. After Lori's birth, Miranda and Andrew's relationship was short-lived. They split up, only having contact when it regarded Lori. Eventually, Miranda moved to Tampa, but she struggled caring for Lori. So eventually, her mother Brooklyn moved closer to her daughter and granddaughter so that she could help out. Lori's childhood was rough. According to Brooklyn, Miranda would go out partying at night and then would sleep until 2:30 in the afternoon, leaving snacks on a shelf that was low enough for Lori to reach. Brooklyn tried to tell Miranda that this wasn't acceptable parenting, but Miranda didn't want to listen. She would go out with her friends until the early morning, leaving Lori with Brooklyn. Eventually, Brooklyn had enough. She felt like Miranda was just using her, so she told Miranda that she couldn't help her anymore and left. Brooklyn was probably the only stability and the closest to feeling love that Lori had, so even though she would still see her grandma after she moved out, she wasn't there all the time, so things most likely became a lot worse for Lori. Miranda never showed Lori love as a little girl, often complaining to Brooklyn that Lori was too talkative and too full of energy. She would say that she didn't have the patience for it. According to Brooklyn, Miranda was great with other people's children, so she found it strange that Miranda had such a hard time bonding with her own child. Miranda continued struggling to take care of Lori, telling everyone that she misbehaved, was unruly, and hard to handle. Over the years, Miranda found herself in many different romantic relationships, none of them healthy. Lori made it known that she didn't care for any of her mother's significant others, except for one man named Maurice Jones, who we will talk about more later. When Lori was 4 years old, Miranda ended up having to have a mandatory mental health evaluation. During this time, Lori was staying with Brooklyn. Shortly after, Brooklyn decided that she wanted to move out of Florida altogether, so she would no longer be able to help with and support Lori at all. During this time, Lori's grandfather came to Miami, Florida, and tried to get custody of his granddaughter, but unfortunately, she was placed in the care of Andrew Wiley. Lori lived with Andrew up until she started elementary school, at which time custody was given back to Miranda. She then took Lori and moved to Nashville, Tennessee. By this time, Miranda Paige had become Miranda White, as she had married a woman named LaTanya White. Lori's time with Miranda didn't get much better, even with LaTanya around. LaTanya said Lori was unruly and wouldn't listen to her or Miranda. They moved around a lot, and while living with them, Lori had attended 3 different elementary schools. I can't imagine this was easy for Lori. Being described by many as shy and quiet, it was hard for her to make friends as it was, and then to continuously be moved from school to school had to make having close friends even harder. At one point during this time, Brooklyn once again had temporary guardianship of Lori, but only for a few weeks. During this time, Lori was taking medication that Miranda said she needed, but that had horrible side effects. Lori ended up having an episode in which she ran out of the house screaming. Brooklyn chased her down the street and eventually caught up to her. She managed to get her calmed down and back to the house. Brooklyn said at this point she weaned Lori off of the medication over the course of 3 days. She didn't think that Lori needed it and believed that Miranda was giving it to her to make her calmer. Brooklyn said that Lori was very self-sufficient and smart. She knew how to read before the age of 4, and she also knew how to use a microwave. That's great and all, but that also just tells me that Lori had to be self-sufficient in order to survive because her so-called mother didn't do the things a mother should do, like make sure Lori ate healthy meals. She would just throw some snacks on a shelf and crash after a night of partying. Even though Lori was living with Miranda and LaTanya during this time, she still maintained a relationship with her father, Andrew. She would go to Miami and later to Tallahassee to spend winter and summer breaks with him. During the 2021-2022 school year, Lori lived with Miranda and LaTanya in Goodlettsville and attended Goodlettsville Middle Prep School. According to their records, Lori almost never missed school and made straight A's and B's. She was a model student when it came to her grades. However, her behavior was another story. According to her behavior records, there had been at least one incident where Lori had become enraged and began throwing pens and pencils around the classroom and was having a tantrum. She was referred to a school counselor and from there was referred to a school board certified social worker. This social worker told authorities that she had done different surveys and exercises with Lori to gauge her perception of herself and her ability to cope with stress. From these exercises, it was determined that Lori was possibly suffering from depression and feelings of inadequacy. In another exercise, the counselor provided positive and negative descriptors of personality traits or feelings. Lori often applied negative feelings and attributes toward herself and those of a positive nature outside of herself. Lori described herself as evil, disrespectful, lazy, and hateful. Some of these were later attributed to Miranda referring to Lori as these things. Miranda and LaTanya also told this counselor that Lori had been hospitalized at Vanderbilt University Hospital for a behavior-related issue relating to Lori's attempts to end her own life. This poor little girl was going through hell, and no one stepped in to help her or find out what was causing her behavior. Lori wasn't a bad kid, but she was going through it, and her behavior was most likely a cry for help. In the summer of 2022, Miranda gave custody of Lori to Andrew. This was done with the intent of Miranda taking Lori back to Nashville for the upcoming 2022-2023 school year. This didn't happen, though. Miranda had been taking college classes and had been using whatever was left of the financial aid that she was awarded to pay her bills and live on. According to Miranda, her financial assistance for the 2022-2023 school year was withheld, causing her to have financial difficulties, and ultimately causing her and LaTanya to be evicted from their apartment. She stated that she was afraid the eviction would cause Lori unnecessary stress. So they decided not to pick her up from Andrew and just instead relinquished custody to him just before the beginning of school that year. She claimed to have given Antoine, Andrew's brother, all of Lori's information that Andrew would need to enroll her in school. She didn't give the information to Andrew himself because of their tumultuous relationship. What a great mother to not want to worry her daughter and cause her stress over not being able to pay the rent. I mean, aren't most 5- and 6-year-olds worried about if the rent, water, and power bill are paid? Too bad this was a lie, and Miranda was just being the same Miranda she had always been. She got to see what it was like to be free of her daughter and responsibilities as a mother, and didn't want to go back to doing it again. Not that she had ever done a good job to begin with. How do we know she was lying? Well, according to Andrew, Miranda didn't provide Lori's information to Antoine, which caused Lori to be 3 weeks late enrolling in school in Tallahassee. Miranda didn't even care enough to make sure Lori got enrolled in school on time. And what about the eviction? Well, according to an interview that the police did with the apartment complex manager where Miranda and LaTanya lived, their lease wasn't even terminated until January of 2023, 5 months after the school year began. Also, according to Andrew, Miranda waited until right before school started, then abruptly chose not to return to Tallahassee to pick up Lori because of Lori's unruly behavior. Lori's uncle, Antoine Wiley, the one who Miranda would often communicate with instead of Andrew, told authorities that when Lori would visit his home, which was usually once a month, she was extremely shy and quiet and would most of the time just sit on the couch and watch television. He also said that Lori had gone on trips out of town with him and his family once or twice, and she would be excited while she was out of town. But as soon as they returned back home, she would seem sad. Also, it states in the probable cause affidavit that Miranda actually admitted to authorities that before giving custody to Andrew, she had hunted down her ex-boyfriend, Maurice Jones. You know, the one boyfriend that she had that Lori actually liked. She asked him if he would take care of Lori, but he said no, of course. What the fuck kind of mother just tries to pawn her daughter off to anyone who would take her, especially an ex-boyfriend, a man who has no relation to the little girl? That's a Stefan Stearns and Madeline Soto situation waiting to happen. But Miranda doesn't care as long as she doesn't have to be responsible and take care of her own child. The audacity of this woman is atrocious. So Lori Paige, in all accounts, had a shitty childhood, to say the least. Miranda and her mother, Brooklyn, were still not getting along, and because of this, Miranda didn't want Lori around her either. This woman has some nerve. The only care Lori ever got as a young child was from Brooklyn, because Miranda was too busy going out with her friends and sleeping all day. But she wants to punish Brooklyn because she's mad at her and not let her see her granddaughter, not caring that this is also punishing Lori. Not that Miranda cares about Lori at all. In fact, Miranda told Andrew that he was not to let Lori go around Brooklyn. Miranda chose to abandon Lori, but then acts like she gets some say in her life. She doesn't care who Lori's around. She's just wanting to punish her own mother. Thankfully, Andrew didn't listen to Miranda. He said that Brooklyn often helped him with Lori, and the problem Miranda had with her mother had nothing to do with him or Lori. When Miranda found out that Andrew wasn't abiding by her wishes, she was livid. She claimed that Brooklyn was not a good influence on Lori, later telling investigators that when she was a little girl, Brooklyn would bring men home and force Miranda to have sexual relations with them for money. Basically, she said her mom was pimping her out. This is just what Miranda has said, and we have no idea if it's true. But if it was, then why did Miranda allow Brooklyn to take care of Lori and even live with her when Lori was younger? Miranda pretends to be the concerned mom, when in reality, she is just trying to be vindictive, and she doesn't think anyone can see through her bullshit. Even though Lori had an unstable childhood and a lack of parental attention and parental bonds, she was an excellent student at school, making high grades, mostly A's and B's, and rarely ever missed any classes. When it came to friends, however, it seemed that she didn't have many, and none that were very close. Most of the kids at Griffin Middle School, who were reported to be Lori's friends, told authorities that while they talked to Lori in whatever class they had together, they didn't talk outside of school, and that Lori never talked about her personal life. Some of the kids only said hi to Lori when they passed her in the hall, and that was the extent of their friendship. Another boy was said to be Lori's friend, but when spoken to, he didn't even know who Lori was by name. He had to be shown a photo of her. Most of the kids, though, that knew anything about Lori knew that her favorite thing in the whole world was anime. She would watch it whenever she got a chance. Lori did get bullied quite a bit at school, which sucks because everything she was going through at home, school should have been her safe space. Kids being kids would make fun of Lori for anything they could find to make fun of her for. One student reported that kids would call Lori weird because she mixed her food together. Some of the kids at Griffin knew a little about Lori's home life, but the facts that they knew seemed to be the same among everyone, and they had to do with Andrew. One student reported that Lori's dad was mean to her. Another reported that Lori told them her dad beat her. And there was a time that some kids actually witnessed it. Lori was at the bus stop when her dad walked up with a belt in his hand, and he looked pissed. Apparently, Lori had been walking to or from the bus stop with a boy that her dad had told her to stay away from. He pulled Lori over to the side, and while yelling at her, he started whooping her with the belt in front of everyone. Another time at the bus stop, while waiting to go to school, a few kids were standing there and Lori walked up. Without anyone saying anything to her, Lori blurted out that she, quote, couldn't take this abuse, end quote. Everyone at the bus stop laughed and nothing else was said about the outburst. Another student said that he would often sit with Lori, and when she was sad, he would ask her what was wrong. She would tell him that she was being abused at home, and at times she would have scrapes on her knees and elbows, and at one time had a busted lip. He remembered one day that Lori had said she was scared to go home and was thinking about running away. And Lori did run away one time while living with Andrew. This happened on May 8th of 2023, less than a month before she disappeared. Andrew had reported Lori missing after she didn't come home from school. Teachers and students reported seeing her at school that day, so whatever happened was after school. When Andrew contacted Miranda and told her that Lori was missing, her response was, quote, well, your daughter is probably dead, so let me know, end quote. Mother of the fucking year. Thank God Lori wasn't dead like this piece of shit said, and was found the next day after she showed up to school barefoot. She had spent the night in an abandoned apartment at 1001 Ocala Road in Tallahassee. Another student had helped harbor Lori for the night at the apartment and had brought her food. He told authorities that Lori had said she and her dad had gotten into an argument and that he had hit her. She had also told him that she wanted to go live with her grandmother in Georgia, which was odd because she had no grandmother that lived in Georgia. A teacher at Griffin Middle School was talked to by authorities and said that Lori was extremely quiet. Funny how everyone describes Lori in this way, except for her mother and father. This teacher also described Lori as being extremely smart. She said that Lori seemed to enjoy school, which is obviously true. This child loved school so much and was so concerned about getting good grades that she decided to go to school in the middle of running away from home. Unfortunately, this didn't happen when she disappeared in June. This teacher said that Lori would talk about missing her friends at her school in Nashville, but never talked about her parents. Some teachers described Lori as a type of child who could be easily groomed. For instance, she had more of an interest in talking to adults than she did to kids her age. One of the teachers described an incident when Lori had tried to hug one of her male teachers after openly flirting with him. The teacher reported this to the guidance counselor, and Lori was spoken to. However, even after being talked to, Lori then wrote a note to the same teacher that said, "Do you like me? Yes or no?" She was spoken to again, and she denied everything, including the letter. She was then removed from this teacher's class. Lori seemed to want attention from teachers and other adults, no matter whether it was good or bad, because she wasn't getting attention at home from her family. However, if Lori unknowingly sought attention from the wrong person, this could have put her in a dangerous situation. One of Lori's favorite teachers, Margie Summers, told media outlets how Lori put all her time and energy into doing good in school because of her troubled life at home. Margie taught civics and science class, and she remembered that Lori would take copious amounts of notes in class, while other kids were goofing off. She gave a civics test one time, and a big percentage of students failed it, so she gave them a chance to improve their grade by doing a poster board assignment on the Bill of Rights. Lori had gotten an A on her civics test, Yet she still came to school with what Margie Summers described as a tri-fold cardboard masterpiece. Margie described Lori's project as having little soldiers glued to the board and little American flags all across the top of it. Lori put all of her effort and energy into school, and she had a promising future and could have been someone who changed the world when she grew up, if she would have had a chance to do that. But someone took that from her. A counselor from Lori's school described Lori as usually good at ignoring the other children who would make fun of her and bully her. This seemed to change, though, toward the end of her 6th grade year in 2023. He described Lori as starting to spaz out on the other students. It seemed like that month of May in 2023, Lori was really going through something. Besides her changing behavior at school, she had run away on the 8th, and then on the 25th, she had an altercation with Miranda. Apparently, for some reason, Miranda had called the police to do a welfare check on Lori at Andrew's apartment. After they made contact with Lori and left, Miranda showed up. Apparently, this was really upsetting to Lori, who told Miranda that she didn't want anything to do with her. They fought, and then Miranda left. Andrew said after this, Lori was really down and was saying things like she was worthless and that her mom didn't love her. 1 week later, just a few days after finishing the 6th grade, Lori would disappear, and at first, the police would believe that Lori had once again run away. But that was the furthest thing from the truth. On June 3, 2023, at 11:15 a.m., the Tallahassee, Florida Police Department received a call from 1229 Continental Court. The person calling was Andrew Wiley, and he was reporting that his daughter, Lori Paige, was missing. He had worked his normal overnight shift as a correctional officer. He said when he left the apartment at 11 p.m., Lori was watching TV, and when he returned home that morning at around 10 a.m., Lori was gone, and so was her rainbow-style backpack. The officer on scene asked Andrew for a description of Lori. He described Lori as being black with shoulder-length dreads and was 5 foot tall. She had no marks, scars, or tattoos. He had no clue what she had been wearing. The officer then asked if Lori was taking any meds and if she had any health problems, either physically or mentally. And can you believe that Andrew answered that he didn't know? Lori had lived with him full-time for the last year, and before that, off and on since she was little, and he doesn't know if she takes any medication or has any health problems. And later on in the coming days, the lead detective on the case would ask Andrew for Lori's dental records, and he would say that he didn't know if or when she had ever seen a dentist. This poor girl really was all alone in this world. Her piece of shit parents couldn't be bothered to take care of her or show the least bit of interest in her. No wonder she sought the attention of other adults. She just wanted someone to show that they cared. Andrew was asked if Lori had a cell phone or any other device that they could use to track her location. He told the officer that she did have a phone, but that he had taken it away from her in April, supposedly because he caught her looking at anime porn. Officers checked the phone that Andrew said belonged to Lori, and the last time she had called anyone or sent any messages was on April 17th of 2023, 2 years before. Andrew told law enforcement about Lori running away earlier in May, but stated that he had no clue why she would have run away this time. He said everything had been fine at home and there was no issues. When asked if he knew where she might have run away to, he said he had no idea, except for maybe the abandoned apartment she had stayed in the previous time she had left home. Authorities went to the complex and talked to the apartment manager where Lori had stayed on May 8th. They informed officers that the student who had helped Lori before was no longer living there and had gone to Miami to live with his grandparents for the summer, though his family still lived in the complex. Andrew was asked to provide some background information on Lori. He told Officer Babb from the TBD about Lori's emotionally damaging relationship with her mother and how she had moved in with him full-time approximately a year before. The detective also asked Andrew if they could look through his apartment. They wanted to look for any clues, including those of foul play, but nothing was found. Lori was then put into the NCIC-FCIC database as a missing person, and Detective Drake from the Tallahassee Police Department, who had been assigned to the case, made flyers using the photo they had gotten from Andrew. They immediately started putting them up in the area. Officers talked to neighbors in the complex where Lori lived, searched parks, and talked to people they saw out walking. They also checked Griffin Middle School, but there was no sign of Lori. Detective Drake, being the assigned case agent, took many steps to look for Lori. He contacted Miranda and LaTanya to make sure she wasn't with them. Miranda told the detective that she hadn't seen or heard from Lori since their altercation on May 25th, nearly a week before her disappearance. He also talked to Brooklyn, Miranda's mom, but she had not seen Lori either. On June 5th, 2 days after Lori was reported missing, Detective Drake spoke to Diamond Ivy, who was one of Lori's good friends. She said that she hadn't seen Lori since school had let out for summer, and that Lori didn't have any social media outlets that they could use to communicate. On June 9th, Detective Drake searched area apartment complexes in hope of finding Lori. He also searched transportation depots and the area around the Oscala apartment that Lori had run away to on May 8th, but she was nowhere to be found. A few days later, on June 12th, officers sent Lori's flyer to all the 6th grade parents at Griffin Middle School, just in case she was staying with a friend and lying to the parents about having permission. Andrew was asked if he was in a relationship with anyone, and he said yes, a woman named Simone Robinson. At the time, Simone was in Louisiana for military training. Officers did talk to her, however, and she told them that although Lori didn't use social media, she did play things like Roblox, and she loved to watch videos on YouTube. Detective Drake learned from talking to people who knew Lori that she loved going to the Dade Street Community Center after school, most likely because she would rather be anywhere but home. But the community center hadn't seen Lori since school had gotten out. In fact, it was looking like not many people had seen her since school got out, besides Andrew, Antoine, and Miranda. After the initial search for Lori, things seemed to go quiet for a while. The rest of the summer went by, then fall and winter came, and nothing much was said about the case, and it seemed as if Lori had faded into the background of everyone's mind. The authorities seemed to believe that Lori had just run away as she had before, but Margie Summers, her teacher at Griffin's school, didn't believe this for a minute and made sure that Lori didn't fade from the forefront of everyone's mind. She did all she could to keep Lori's name in the media and make sure that this little girl wasn't forgotten about. She led searches and talked to the media in any chance she got. She did everything in her power to find Lori. In February of 2024, Lori's case started gaining traction. There were billboards put up in Tallahassee that were provided by the FBI and the Tallahassee Police Department. They were also offering a $15,000 reward for any information leading to Lori's recovery. On February 20th of 2024, law enforcement decided to go back to where they started, so over 100 officers conducted another grid search of San Luis Park, but they still came up with nothing. It was like Lori was just erased from existence in the matter of a few hours. No matter where the investigation led them, they seemed to keep circling back to Lori's father, Andrew Wiley. He had been a person of interest from the start. Authorities just didn't have enough evidence to charge him with anything at this point, and not knowing where Lori was really hindering the investigation. But after giving inconsistent details in his statements, and authorities noticing his very nonchalant demeanor since Lori went missing, they started focusing on him again in February of 2024, 8 months after Lori went missing. This is when authorities finally obtained a warrant for historical records of Andrew Wiley's phone number that he used during the period from before Lori went missing until October of 2023. So basically a 6-month period. While focusing on the night and the day after Lori went missing, on June 2nd, 2023, the night before Lori went missing, Andrew's phone showed that it was at his residence from 12:20 a.m. until 9:30 a.m. Though a license plate reader showed Andrew's vehicle, a white Dodge Charger, traveling southbound at the intersection of I-10 and North Monroe at 8:28 a.m. This means that Andrew must not have taken his phone with him to work that night, if he went to work. The next morning, the phone leaves the apartment a couple of times for just a few minutes. That afternoon, a strange call is placed from Andrew's phone. A call is placed from Andrew's phone to Priceline at around 2:56 p.m. Then, just after 4 p.m., the phone leaves the apartment and takes a trip to Jack's Airport. It arrives there at 6:59 p.m. and leaves and starts heading back home at 7:21 p.m. It arrives at the apartment at 9:45 p.m. At 10:45 p.m., the phone travels to Andrew's work, where he has to clock in at 11. On June 3rd, 2023, the day that Lori is reported missing, Andrew's phone departs work at approximately 8:30 a.m. So his phone was with him that night. Nothing else was noted until the call came in at 11:15 a.m. reporting Lori missing. Later that day, Andrew went to Lake Jackson and remained there for 3 hours, then was at his residence the rest of the day. So, why did he take a trip to the airport after calling Priceline? Was he taking a trip? And why was his phone left at home the night before Lori went missing? Did he even go to work that night, or was he doing something else that he didn't want his phone to track him doing? Was he involved in Lori's disappearance, and were the police on to him? All of this will have to wait until next week. For photos from this episode, check out The Victim's Voice on Facebook, X, or Instagram, or check out our new webpage at the-victims-voice.org. And come back next week for part 2 of Lori Paige's case. Until then, stay safe and peace out.